Keith, here we are in Hyde Park.
Back in Hyde Park. I love this neighborhood. This is my daily walk-in. This is like my daily driver.
You do love this. You do love this neighborhood, and I see why. Look at these purple flowers over here. It's beautiful. It's a beautiful morning. We got a lot of rain last night, so it's kind of breezy and cool.
My friend Vicky Boone turned me on to this neighborhood because she said there's a ton of shade, and in Texas, like shade is at a premium.
She was throwing shade at you, but in a good way.
The opposite of whatever that it was. Yeah.
Look out, Waymo.
Shining a light.
Yeah, I think. Oh boy,
Waymo.
We're taking our lives in our own hands as a.
We're confusing the robot. He doesn't know what to do.
Right, wow, run. I've never waved at a car that doesn't have a driver in it.
I didn't wave back. Wave less.
Okay, so what are we doing today, Keith?
All right, we are walking around Hyde Park. We are talking to
Greg Kwedar.
Greg Kwedar, recent Oscar nominee. Austin filmmaker.
For his beautiful movie Sing Sing, which in my mind is basically a documentary. It's meta on meta on meta, as you will hear in our conversation with Greg.
Yeah, this is a first for us, taking our dock walk into the world of fiction. But like you said, that fiction is highly based on true story.
So without further ado, here's our buddy Greg Kwedar.
On your left.
You're listening to Dock Walks with Ben and Keith. Greg Kwedar, Oscar-nominated filmmaker. Not the first Oscar nominee to be on the podcast, I will point out.
Oh, wait, who is this?
But certainly the most recent. Well, please don't kill Diane Kwan.
Okay, I will.
Yeah, please don't kill Diane.
Or Kahane Korn Cooperman. Or John Sloss.
Oh, are they all Oscar nominated?
Yeah, I believe so. But none as recent as Greg. Greg spent the last several years working on an incredible project that we are definitely about to get into. That film has had a wild ride from conception through release and a wild ride after release.
Yeah.
We are glad to grab Greg as he's finally getting a chance to exhale.
Right.
Seems like, we'll find out. Knowing him, he's about to launch into another thing, but that film is called Sing Sing.
Well, and also we should point out that Greg is our first guest who is not actually a documentary filmmaker. Right? I think we're going to
Dock Walks first.
This is a Dock Walks first. I think we're going to debate that today because sure. I think that you actually are a documentary filmmaker in disguise. But you make narrative feature films primarily.
Yes.
Is that fair to say?
No, it's fair to say. But I got my beginnings in doc filmmaking actually, and that's where I think most of my early training was, and also what shaped how I make narrative films.
Yeah, definitely. Well, it sounds like what you did, and I've listened to a couple of interviews, and you and I are also friends, so you've told me some of this before. But it sounds like what you did was start as a documentary filmmaker and then realize this isn't for me. Like I can like help shape this a little bit more, right? Like what is
right?
What is it that like made you want to put actors into essentially live situations with real people?
Yeah, I think the star I was always aiming at was narrative filmmaking when I got into storytelling, but the kind of barriers to entry of doing that are so arduous. It requires, at least, your perception is that it requires so many more, hurdles to overcome to even make a narrative film. But documentary filmmaking, like the access to being able to tell a story is like right at your fingertips. Mm-hmm. And so there was an easier access point for me to just dive in and start figuring out who I was as a storyteller. But also those were the first stories I were discovering were in that medium.
Yeah.
As I was becoming a filmmaker.
You did have a real like adventurous start, right? Like you didn't start as a filmmaker, you started as an accountant, right?
That is accounting student. All right. Okay, now we're talking.
But then, that's okay. That part isn't maybe the adventure. But then you went to South America and you were like, you bought a bus and you were going to drive a bus around Mexico.
Okay, how does Ben have all this inside information about who you are? I did not read the Wikipedia.
It's close. It's close. So, I was an accounting major at Texas A&M. It was pretty secure. There was pretty much a guaranteed job waiting for you if you completed the program.
So take note, if filmmaking isn't working out for you,
Texas
there
A&M
might be a life in numbers.
has a way you can
Well,
get a job.
I don't know if that still holds up, because I was when I graduated was right when the 2008 financial crisis happened, and most of my colleagues went into a very uncertain future.
Right now, there are three
Alongside
dudes walking around doing a podcast about accounting, and they're talking about how maybe filmmaking is the fallback that they need.
Well, so the brief story is, I was also an athlete. I played rugby at A&M, and I was going to play in between my junior and senior year overseas in Sydney, Australia. Actually, right before, like a couple days before I left for Australia, I had an interview with PricewaterhouseCoopers in New York City. And when I was there for the interview, I was in the financial district in this lobby on the 50th floor in an ill-fitting suit. I was like looking down through the glass.
I like that detail, the ill-fitting suit.
It was, I mean, I remember that the sensation of just like feeling super awkward, in the suit I was wearing, looking down at Ground Zero, and the memorial hadn't been built yet. If you're looking at that, it's already unsettling, but there was like a deeper, almost spiritual unsettling around the prospect of this being my life,
Right.
being an accountant being my life. So I did the interview, and I decided to walk uptown after I was done, and I got to Washington Square Park, and I just remember being there and being around like so bohemian, and like there were artists there were hippies, there were people smoking and playing music, and I was just like, I love the vibrancy of this city. I want to be here, but I don't want to be here wearing this suit. And so I went to Australia, and when I was there, it was the first time I was ever like really, really disconnected from family, from the life I was living. And when I wasn't training, I just had all this time to myself, and I would surf and just kind of sit in cafes. And I pulled out a notebook and started writing really for the first time in years. And I just kept hearing this high school AP English teacher, Mrs. Smith, who told me years ago that I had an interesting voice and that I should keep writing. And I was like, nah, kind of pushed it away. But when I was alone down under, it came back to me. And
Can you say that with
I
an
almost
accent?
heard, the Australian accent there. Down under.
And after I started kind of being creative again, I started getting curious, like what was going on in the film scene in Sydney.
Yeah, and you took a tour, right? And then you got pulled in as a PA.
Yeah, I looked up the film school in Sydney. They got a tour, and in the basement of the tour, these two women were casting their short film and just handed me the sides and were like, hey, can you read for the actors that have come in? I was like, I'm just on a tour, but okay.
That's such a great indie film story, because they're like, hey, you, like free labor, like get over here.
Exactly.
We need help.
I was like, yeah, I mean, sure. And so a couple hours later, I was having a blast with them, and they were just like, well, what are you doing in 2 weeks? We need a PA. And I was like, I don't know what that is, but sure, I'll be there. And I showed up on their set, and like the second I was on their set, I was like, oh my God, this is for me.
This is it.
Yeah.
No ill-fitting suit.
It was like going behind the curtain into like a magical wonderland, but it was more like the way all of these different artists and different formats of creativity were working together.
So wait, we jumped into talking about process before we started talking about what we're actually doing here. So tell us where we are here, Greg. And what are you seeing on our walk?
Oh yeah.
I'm going to start with a shot of what I'm seeing.
Yeah, I live in this neighborhood. I've never walked on this street before. We started a stroll outside First Light Books, which is an amazing bookstore coffee shop that is beautifully curated, and kind of immediately as soon as they arrived on the scene, it just bam, like inspired community. Like people were showing up. Pretty much every Saturday we walk with our daughter to First Light, and so it's become a family ritual. But, that's a really cool little.
Isn't that a good-looking
You want to
alley?
hit that alley?
That's like a Terrence Malick alley. Look at that, like something straight out of like
Ben's the Sissy Spacek.
Badland. Yeah, right.
Wow.
All right, so we're walking through Hyde Park. You said you live in this neighborhood.
I live in this neighborhood.
How long have you been in Austin? How long have you been living the Hyde Park life?
Well, literally, when I got home from Australia, I dropped out of accounting in the middle of a test. applied to a bunch of film schools that I didn't get into, and I moved to Austin in 2008.
Let's go look at these flowers over here.
Pick a winner here. Who's your favorite? Not that everything needs to be a competition, but
I like this blend of sort of purple and orange going on.
Oh yeah.
I don't begin to know what these flowers are, but
Wow.
do either of you know?
yeah, that's a purple bun setter, and I believe the orange one is called Lila's Endeavor.
Are you
No,
making this up?
I'm
Totally making it up. Yeah.
I decided
wouldn't
I
totally
decided I was going to start making up birds,
Yeah,
but I got an
absolutely.
opportunity to make up flowers first.
The bun setter. I was like, Oh, but anyways, when I was thinking about your projects, you know, Sing Sing, you get access to a maximum security prison and film with people who either are currently incarcerated or were.
Right.
And just, you know, the thing with documentary that's so hard is the access.
Right.
And in narrative filmmaking, that usually is taken away because you can build sets and create worlds so you don't have to get access to things. But you almost seem to go directly at places that are hard to access, like a racetrack for jockey or border patrol for Trans Pecos. Like, is that part of your creative process, is to like find worlds that feel sort of impenetrable or like that haven't been like fully explored?
And is that by design? Like, is that something that's built into it, or is that something that's a natural extension?
You know, I've worked with a creative partner for about 15 years, Clint Bentley, that we've written and separately directed 2 movies each, but written 4 together. And when we were making our first film, Trans Pecos, it took us about 6 years to make that film. And a lot of that time was just figuring out how to write a script for the first time, and what was going to be our process, and what was drawing us to this story. And you know, we had both had a lot of border experience in very different ways, and I had this hunch that maybe a way in to gain an understanding of the complexity of the border was through the lens of the people whose 9-to-5 jobs were to work in quote unquote protecting the border. And so that kind of instilled a perspective around stories around, you know, which is that we're interested in worlds that people think they understand and that are often in plain sight. But if you slip behind the curtain, and instead of going through the front door, you go through a cellar door or a side window and look at it from a different perspective or an unexpected lens, it can reveal an entirely new, complex, and maybe more true understanding of that world. But I had this weird experience where my wife and I went to Big Bend, and I was in Santa Elena Canyon, and when I was there, I was just like marveling at the fact that this was a hotly contested international border. It's like beautiful canyon walls on each side. If you drop down from space, you would not know that this was
Like a problematic area.
right. Exactly. You know, it's
You're there
so
on
peaceful.
vacation, like having a great time.
And there were all these smooth stones on the bank, and I ended up just picking up a stone and skipping across the water and kind of laughing at the irony that I was doing it in such a sensitively contested place. And as I was doing that, these 2 Border Patrol agents came and like saddled up beside me. And at first I thought I was in trouble, you know, like I'd broken some law, but they didn't say anything to me. I didn't say anything to them. And as we drove away, I just had this idea, like, what if these agents wearing this uniform that's the symbol of so much division, as soon as I left, what if they picked up rocks and were skipping rocks on the border wearing that uniform?
Oh, that's cool.
And that kind of imagined humanity was like a key. I was like, oh God, this could be a way into a story. Like, we should focus a movie on these agents.
So let's freeze frame that moment.
Yeah.
How does that feeling stand out from, you know, seeing this lady walking her dog, or, you know, any other interaction you have with another person? Is there?
Speaking of, let's get a shot of these beautiful dogs. Hi, good
Oh
morning.
my gosh, wow.
Wow, look at these. Hi, look at these smiley dogs. Hello. What are their names?
Cody and Cody.
Cody and Cody, love
They
it.
rhyme. Oh, that's beautiful.
So anyway, you have a moment, you have an interaction with a person,
Yeah.
and it grabs you. It kind of like hooks into your.
It just kind of fit a puzzle. I mean, there was already maybe something in the works, consciously or subconsciously, around a strong compulsion to investigate the border conflict from a narrative lens.
So you
to
sort of
something that I
saw-
already had a draw to
Right.
do as a movie.
Gotcha.
That's
It
interesting.
doesn't always work. You know, Sing Sing was,
Yeah, that was my next question. What was that like freeze
Well-
frame picture for Sing Sing?
I mean, I guess a little, it just maybe is a little more fast tracked without the kind of background experience. It was based on a trip when I was producing a short documentary inside of a maximum security prison in Kansas, and it was my first time.
See, you are a documentary filmmaker.
It was my
Right.
first time ever behind the walls of a prison. And on a tour of the facility, we were making a film about something else, but I passed by a cell and there was a young man raising a rescue dog inside of a cell, which that moment stopped me in my tracks
Yeah.
because it went against the grain of every expectation I had about prison, and that I was sort of trained to think about prison from mostly the movies I grew up watching, honestly. And in that moment, I saw, you know, compassion, healing that was happening in both directions between the man and the animal. And I saw like just a different way. I just knew that whatever that was working. I didn't even need to see it played out. I didn't need to see evidence. I just saw it happening in real time.
So it was that moment of the inmate with the dog that you were like, this is interesting. This is a contrast. There's a
Which
contrast
it just brought that compulsion, that kind of question of like, I was desperate to know, was there anyone else out there doing things differently like what I just saw?
Right.
That idea of like conception and misconception.
Oh, here, hang on. Let's
Yeah.
get a shot of this very loud bulldozer.
Oh, yeah.
By us here.
It's good filmmaking right there. You got to contextualize the sound that you're hearing, like blasting the microphone.
Like
We're
when
more
you're-
willing to accept it.
the idea of conception and misconception, like
Yeah. Yeah.
confronting something that defies your expectation and recognizes like, oh, here's a soft spot in my own recognition of the world, right? Like I wasn't thinking about this. I wouldn't expect it. How much of that is about confronting your own like bias and getting into your take on the world and your take on
Yeah.
humanity, and how much of it is about knowing an audience
Right.
will do the same?
I think.
Wait, I'm not sure I understand the question. You're saying, what is he? Sorry to cut you off,
Yeah.
but you're
Well, I
you're
understood
asking
the
like,
question.
are you? Oh, you did.
No, I'm kidding. I did, but go ahead.
Well,
ask.
okay, that's great, Greg.
Sorry about
Let's keep the focus on me. here. Are you asking like, is he writing something for himself to understand, or writing something for the audience?
Well, I think like
Understand.
I recognize that moment that he's describing in my own filmmaking.
Right.
And, you know, like my first documentary was about blind teenagers. I made that film because I met somebody who worked at the Texas School for the Blind, and everything he shared with me about these kids defied my expectation and understanding of what it meant to be blind. And so the more that I was wrong about the thing, the more excited I got.
Right.
But at the same time I was having this conversation, we were at a wedding. At the same time I was having this conversation with him, I noticed that I basically put him on the spot and asked him multiple questions. But the more questions I asked him, the more other people leaned in, and it became a group
Yeah.
moment where I realized like, oh, I really want to understand a thing I don't understand. But I also saw in that moment there's an audience.
I see.
Like
Right.
these people also want to know.
So it's like,
Right.
when did you know that would?
Well, I'm
other
asking, like-
people had the same.
Yeah, like,
question.
does he care about the audience from that initial moment? And part of it is, like, what I'm honestly getting at is
Yeah.
bringing an idea like that to your partner.
Right.
Because you had this experience with your wife and Big
Yeah.
Bend, and then
Right.
at some point you call Clint
Yeah.
and you say, here's the thing I had.
Yeah.
But I wanted to see where you take that.
Well, I mean, I'm generally trying to hold up the kind of virtue of like servicing the audience of one. You know, like the
Like, if you think it's
yeah,
interesting,
like what would I
trust
want
the
to
audience.
sit in a theater and watch, and what thrills and delights me and confounds me and challenges me, you know. And if it does do that, then I just sort of trust that it will naturally replicate and do that for others.
How much
Now-
of a role does Clint play in that?
Well, that's the thing, is like, so far we do with ideation, like pitch each other things, and if someone's like, you know, like I'm certainly, it kind of will be a killjoy, and yet the ones that we really have gone for, we've both been pretty immediately, if one brings forward an idea that just like is a lightning bolt, it hits just as immediately for the other. And I think I'm learning to trust that more. Like when, now I'm in a place where I do get pitched quite a lot of projects, and if you have to sort of sit and deliberate about it and think and like try and work yourself up to falling in love with it, like it doesn't usually lead you to being something to pursue.
Yeah.
I do kind of trust that kind of immediate,
like you just
kind of
feel
sensation
it,
of feeling, when it
reminds me of like I'm seeing this house for sale here, and our realtor, when my wife and I bought our house, told us that same thing. She was like, you're gonna look at like 100 houses, and you're gonna walk into one, and you're just gonna know,
and you're
like that's your house.
I think I do. I don't know, is that similar for you guys? Like when the projects you've made, like did they kind of hit you like a truck when you finally discovered it?
Definitely for me. I mean, like with Winnebago Man, we just watched that all the time. And so when it got, the idea started as like a, after the bar, we're all laughing in the living room. What if we found him kind of thing.
Right.
But then it kept getting sort of like what you guys were just saying. Like I was wrong, and I kept discovering all this new information that would like thrill me. And documentaries take so long to make that like you have to stay interested and excited, and if that excitement starts to wane, that for me is always a huge red flag. Like, oh, I need to be this excited for 2 or 3 years, and if I can't do that now, then I need to find another idea.
I think one thing you're saying that resonates, where I've always sort of thought that in like early engagement with a project, that if you have this sensation that you'll whatever questions you have now, you'll have more when you're finished.
Right.
Well, Sing Sing does one of my very favorite things that great storytelling in any medium does, which is that...
You know what I realized we haven't done, though? Is we haven't explained to people what Sing Sing is. Let's tell them just really quickly what
Do you want to explain?
Yeah, I do want to. Yeah.
So why don't you set it up and then do the thing you said.
Well, and you correct me where I'm wrong.
Okay.
Let's jump into the shade, though.
Good call.
So Sing Sing is a scripted, fictionalized account of a very true set of circumstances. It's the story of men in Ossining State Prison, Sing Sing, in Ossining, New York, and it's men who are confronting their masculinity, their choices, their circumstances, and what they find as a group together is unity through the process of participating in a theater program, finding how collaboration, how art, how humility, how vulnerability can truly make the world a better place, one person at a time.
Well, and it stars Coleman Domingo, who got nominated for an Oscar.
Coleman Domingo, primarily a two-hander.
Yeah.
And his counterpart in it is the real life person.
Yeah, Clarence Macklin.
Whose experience you're dramatizing, but you're doing that using the tools of documentary to bring this true story to the screen. And so that was my experience of watching Sing Sing. I loved it. I couldn't stop talking about it. I had loved it from the moment you told me about it. Months before you went into production, you shared with me a Zoom call between your two lead actors, and the Zoom call was powerful to the point where I believe I said to Greg, you don't have to go to all the trouble of shooting this movie. You can just screen this Zoom call. He wisely didn't listen to that.
I'm glad you didn't listen to Keith. Good.
No, but it's also interesting, Keith, we've known each other a long time. Like my first film, Trans-Pecos, was premiering at South by Southwest the same time that Tower was premiering there, and that kind of was started the formative process of us like getting to know each other, and we've been hanging out ever since. And I actually had the idea for Sing Sing a few months before Trans-Pecos premiered at South by. It was in January of 2016 that the idea sort of surfaced.
And the film hit theaters nationwide in August of 24?
Yeah.
So it's an 8-year process.
And then the Oscars were 2025 of March, so 9 years in total. Yeah. The world came very fully formed. The opportunities with characters, but not like where to focus the movie on which characters, because the reality was that we learned early on is that you can make a movie about any one of the men in that program. And we really struggled with focus, like how to focus the structure of the film, and even how to integrate a lot of what you're talking about, like the different mediums of documentary and theater and fiction storytelling, all that kind of sat under that umbrella of Sing Sing.
Yeah, it's meta on meta on meta, because you're reenacting, like in the case of the parole board hearing, that was an actual, you're taking effectively the transcript that actually happened, having an actor perform it with other actors, but in the place where it occurred, around the construct of a theater program. That did actually happen.
With a play that was performed in 2005 at Sing Sing, that we reprised on the film set with most of the original cast that was there inside Sing Sing at the time that came back. So, what I was going to say about you, Keith, was I remember sort of several sort of chapters of talking about this film with you. One, when I first had come across the idea, you were hugely encouraged. You were just like, that's a movie. You know, like it was like a very much like, wow. You know, like you felt like the thrill that I felt around like first discovering it as a concept. And we would then go on, and Clint and I would work with a lot of the real life men and, you know, very similar kind of interview capacities. We just didn't have cameras or microphones or anything like that, you know. And then we also became volunteer teachers, and we taught inside the prison ourselves. And we would go away, and we would then be like, okay, we're the filmmakers now. We'll put on our writing hat, and we'll try to translate what we saw and felt onto a page. And then anytime we would give a script to someone, you read one of our earlier drafts.
Yeah.
And yours was like most people who read earlier drafts of ours, just like, I love the movie you're trying to make, but this doesn't feel like it, you know? It just felt like, honestly, it felt like an imitation of whatever we were actually experiencing.
So like it wasn't how the prisoners actually.
Well, and what I remember of that is that Greg was so, you get so passionate about your films, and you do that thing that makes me passionate, which is you inspire envy in me. I say, oh, how did he beat me to this one?
That's right, because you work a lot in documentary, but you also you write scripts. You know, Keith, you came from a narrative background, so
you know, I've enjoyed, like, part of like my friendship with Greg is like it's a colleagueship, right? So we talk to each other about our ideas quite a bit, and we coalesce around the highs and lows, and there's often lows. So Greg is somebody that I've relied on to kind of bounce ideas off of and share, and I love when he does that with me. And so when it came to the early days of Sing Sing, I saw that drive and that passion and the fact that you guys went and volunteered. You really put your money where your mouth is. You put your time in. You were getting to know these folks, and the question of like learning voice and gaining, not just gaining access, but like kind of being invited into the shoes of the folks that you had observed.
Right.
You were still in the process of figuring that out, I think.
Yeah, and the challenge in the writing process for us was again that question of focus. At first, because you could make a movie about everyone that we met, we tried to do that, you know, and so it was a true ensemble piece. It was a far more faithful adaptation of a Esquire magazine article that was one of the source materials that we were working with. And when we would share that, no one could connect to any one character because it was too broad. And so we realized we needed to narrow the point of view, and so we swung to the entire opposite end of the spectrum, and we wrote like a single point of view, one character's journey through the program. It wasn't even one of the real life men, it was kind of a composite character of a lot of the guys that we met. And that was probably the most fictionalized account that we wrote. And then people wouldn't connect to that because it was too narrow, because ultimately this is a story of a community, and we sort of lost that through this sort of very narrow focus. And so 6 years into the development process, I finally had kind of two lightning bolt moments. One was that it was a story of a friendship, and we had known these two real life guys, Divine I and Divine G, who couldn't have been more different from each other, came from very different experiences brought them to their incarceration. They needed very different things in the program. Wouldn't have been friends if not for the program, but because of it became sort of closer than family. And it just felt like through their two experiences, you could get a very holistic view of the overall program. And through a friendship, you could be representing a community feeling and then have the ensemble sort of circle around them. It just came like really one afternoon, almost fully formed in a notebook in about 15 minutes.
Man, isn't that so incredible? Like, I love like when songwriters talk about that, or like in the Pee Wee Herman doc that just came out, he talks about how like they wrote, once they figured out that Pee Wee's Big Adventure, what the central conflict was about a bike, and it was Paul Rubens actually wanting a bike to ride around the lot in real life, and then getting a bike that looked a lot like the Pee Wee Herman bike. Wow. That's when he and Phil Hartman and the other guy's name I forget
saw it,
figured out, they were like, that's the conflict. Pee Wee Herman loves his bike, he loses it, and the movie is him getting it back. And they said they wrote it in like a week.
Wow.
And whereas they had been writing for months up to that point. And
but
like,
you know, none of that early time is wasted. It's all accumulating to something.
No wasted steps.
Yeah, because you're synthesizing.
I've heard that somewhere before, Keith.
You're talking about like the overnight success of 8 years of development.
Yeah.
You know, and that's like, I just want to put a fine point on this moment. They started a documentary. The documentary introduced them to a boy and his dog that sparked an idea, right? There's a pivotal dog scene in Sing Sing.
Yes,
it's the opposite end of the spectrum from what you witnessed.
Yeah, true. Which wasn't planned.
Well, and I want to hear the story behind that in just a moment. I just want to point out this for our audience: a documentary, a script, a volunteer experience, another script.
Right.
Friends reading your scripts, agents reading your scripts, probably producers reading scripts.
Yeah, and passing on.
And getting a lot of rejection along the way. But knowing that there is something here and ending up with something that this is about friendship. Yeah. And the fact that you make this with your colleague and your friend, I don't know, it's not lost on me that it takes all of those steps. And I think so many of us have ideas as strong as that idea, but what we haven't always had is the drive to stay with it for.
Right. Yeah, the stick-to-itiveness.
You know, usually one of us is a bit up and another is a little down.
Right.
And so having that partner and friend there who's able to like hold a hand out when you're on your butt and it's like, hey, keep going. Yeah. Don't give up on this.
Yeah.
As well as the very brief moments of success can also be isolating for a lot of us. And to have someone that you did all this with, that you can high five on those brief peaks, you know, before you're back on your ass again,
right,
is also like brings more of the joy in the process. I'm about to embark on a potentially 2 experiments of films that I did not originate, that were scripts that someone else wrote, that I'm coming on to direct.
And is this the first time you've done that?
First time.
Wow.
Yeah. And so much of like what we were talking about earlier is that discovery process of the adventures behind it. So someone's already had the adventure, you know, and I'm kind of coming into it. And yet at the same time, what's thrilling about the moment is these are both films that I deeply identify with, but I never would have come up with on my own. You know, and so that's the opportunity. So there's the trade-off there.
Yeah.
You know, I think about it preparing with cast, I like to design experiences for the cast.
Sure, yeah.
Talk more about that.
I'm doing a kind of a romantic dramedy that's sort of a college-age film that I'm hoping to shoot in the fall. And for the cast, like I'm thinking about like us all trying to sneak into a frat party, you know, and
that's cool.
and then there's a period that the cast meets 10 years later and around a funeral and in an old family home, and I just want to get in that home and like we're all making meals together, like recipes remember like that our parents made for us when we were kids, and like it's things like that or part of it takes place in a big city that, you know, it's like what is your perfect day in this city, and like experiencing that through each cast member and learning about each other through that. Like these are the things I'm more down to do than
Are you
explicitly working the scenes.
And are you keeping track of like the actors, like what's working for one, you know, when you're doing an ensemble piece?
Yeah, I learned that very early on with Trans-Pecos, where it was a 3-hander.
Yeah.
And each of those actors had a very different process. One of the actors was very experiential, like wanted every take to feel like he had done it for the first time, so he would never do anything the same way twice. I had another actor who's very interior, so wanted to just spend hours the night before the scene in the hotel room, like going over every, you know, motivation, every line, every comma, you know, like why is that comma there? What does that mean for, you know, my character's trajectory in this scene? And then I had another actor who was very a playbook guy, like just wanted to do the scene the way it was written on time and get it in 1 or 2 takes, you know. And so all of those were very conflicting processes.
Those are hard to put together. Yeah.
But I love whatever that alchemy is of like finding that harmony, and sometimes that creates healthy conflict of like of those needing to come together and find common ground, and sometimes it needs like more compromise and massaging and like, you know, getting people to, you know, meet someone like in the middle. And ever since then, I've just like I've always never tried to enforce a process on an actor, but try to actually ascertain what it is. Oftentimes an actor will say what their process is if you ask them, but it's actually not their real process.
It's like their idealized version of.
Yeah, you just have to pay attention to it, and
that's funny.
And
well, I wonder if that's where like the documentarian that lives inside of you really comes forth, because like
I like the idea of a little documentarian.
Yeah.
It's right in there somewhere.
Little gray hair is sticking out of your chest right now. The documentary turned all our hairs gray.
Oh, wait a second. Let's look at this car for a second. Look at this thing.
I see this car every day on my walks. I walk this neighborhood quite a bit.
Gentleman, I believe, lives in it.
Yes.
Wow. Look at the signatures all over.
He might be there right now, and the back door is open.
Yeah.
Wow.
Thank you, God.
Yeah, we come to this park all the time. My daughter loves the swings and the slides here.
Ben, I was going to ask you.
Yeah.
Like what Greg's describing, working with actors, like finding the way to connect and to bring to the surface what you first saw in, or what you foresee in your mind's eye, or what you're imagining versus what you've experienced. Like, what's your take on that as a doc filmmaker who loves verite, loves being with real people in real instances?
Yeah. That's a great question. I think the closest thing I have to that is when I did High Hopes, which is the Hulu show that I did with Kimmel's company, and they wanted this, they had the world, and they wanted me to come in and cast the characters, and then the approach was something like a real-life version of Parks and Rec is what they basically wanted. And the way that I saw it too. And so to me, then it was finding the stories that existed already with this funny group of stoner characters, and then just working with them so that they could naturally come about. Like knowing that they aren't actors, there's no way that we could recreate this in like an authentic way. So what are some funny stories that already exist that we could talk about? And a good example is like one of the delivery driver guys who has been with them the longest, the first employee, had gotten sent home recently for the first time in 15 years for being too high. Because they're becoming more corporate, and so they're trying to play by the book. And it had just happened. It happened like a month before we started filming. And so we had him come over to the boss's house and have the boss basically confront him about it. And even though that had already happened, it was like real because he didn't know that it was going to happen, and it was based on a real thing. So short story long, like basically I look for things that are true for the people and then put them in situations that will create conflict naturally that they can react to, which is what it sounds like you do working with actors, right?
I just want to point out, if you go on a walk with me in Austin, Texas, especially on a hot day, you're going to end up hanging out in a shady spot by a creek. This is one of my favorite little spots here, next to Hyde Park. And I don't know the name of this creek, but
what's the name of the park?
This is Hyde Park, named after Roy Shipe.
Shipe. Okay.
Shipe, yeah. We walked past the Shipe house earlier.
Yeah. There's the pool, Shipe pool.
That's right.
It's amazing.
We're getting close to the end of our time together. I know you've got a heart out because you've got the hard work of making movies in front of you. Greg, look, we've interviewed a bunch of people that we're like friends with and friendly with on this podcast. But you're really the first like real here in Austin colleague and friend that I've had a chance to talk to on this.
Yeah.
And I want to ask you, what are we doing right and what are we doing wrong? No, this, I do want feedback.
That's a quality question.
We want this podcast to be of service to film fans and certainly anybody who wants to know more about Sing Sing, hopefully will find this. But we also want to be in service to like emerging filmmakers, to people like how you felt after your one day of Australian PAing, or or how Ben felt before he got a yes from UT Film School, and how I felt every day of my career, wanting to understand this business and this art form and this lifestyle just a little bit better. And so I guess my question is, what could we do that could be of service to that audience?
I don't know. I mean, what I liked about the experience was just following our own natural curiosity, which I think is a signal of something being a purpose, like to build a career upon, is about like remaining a student and staying alive and curious. And so like that, not just being based out of the conversation that we just had, but also like what we were, you were paying attention to what was happening around us, like little discoveries like along the trail, is actually in service of stimulating the curiosity of the conversation.
Yeah.
So I don't know. I would like keep on trucking. But I don't know. Coming back on the curiosity thing is just like, I'm still just as much a student of what we do as when I started 15 years ago. Like on the way here, I was listening to a filmmaking podcast interview. Mostly what I listen to is, along with like current events news and stuff, if I'm fascinated by a film, I will go as deep as I can, like after I've seen some in the theater, and all the behind the scenes nature, the interviews with the cast and crew, that like feed that. Like don't ever feel, it's kind of like that thing of like having more questions by the end is what you started with. That's similar to I think a life of filmmaking too.
Like and just being a student. You're a lifelong student because that's what staying curious is what leads you to telling stories. To like sort of so you can make up your mind about how you feel about a topic.
Yeah. You asked before when we were walking, like, how do we feel when we get an idea, and like how do we know it's going to be a movie? And you gave your example and Ben gave his example, and for me, mine is a little bit different, only in that I talk myself into and out of story ideas constantly. And what I realize is like by the 6th or 7th time I've talked myself back into it, I realize I can't let go of it.
Right.
I'm a naturally critical person, and so I will beat up an idea to try and figure out what makes it special and what's worth our energies.
Right.
But I'll do it with a sense of like filling my own cup each time, and then my goal is to hand that cup off.
And I
appreciate what you're saying.
I've had some of those lightning bolt moments where I was like, oh, this is a film, and then we've gone down a road sometimes for several years to never end up making it. But I think it's like still trusting that instinct to lean in, and at least activate on it and do something. What is the first thing you can do to explore it and push further, whether that's just the back and forth questioning of it, that's an internal monologue, or whether that's actually getting out in the world and starting to put boots on the ground and really like get a flashlight out and really start looking at whatever that subject is.
Yeah, that's great.
Yeah, that's a great answer.
Hey, listen, we're about 4 minutes from your car.
Okay.
Yeah.
Why don't we start moseying that way?
All right,
That's great.
Ben?
I'm going to get a shot of you guys walking off. It seems like a nice natural endpoint here.
There, and then just be like, I think there's a shot like this in The Third Man. I don't think there is, but well, this has been great. I also want to say,
Okay, here I come.
here he comes. We've all had so much fun watching.
Wait, you're not asking my gateway drug question,
There,
are you?
no, no. I was, to use a Ben Steinbauerism, I was waxing Greg's car.
Hey,
I was just telling him what fun it's been for all of us here in Austin. You know, neither one of us put out a movie last year.
Oops, sorry.
You know,
Hang on,
we
guys.
just were developing and making and doing our thing. But we got to see you and Clint kind of take on the world, and to go from like taco lunches and big sandwiches to the big screen with Sing Sing. I mean, it was just like, you know, you root for your friends and you want every movie to be a success personally and professionally.
Yeah.
It doesn't always happen.
Yeah.
So when it does, let's all celebrate. And
No, you've said that a few times, and I really appreciate it, because it's easy to get myopic about an award season experience, because it is incredibly taxing.
they call it a campaign for a reason, right?
Yeah.
Like, it's a war campaign.
You know, I traveled every week for an entire year. Missed a good chunk of my 2-year-old daughter's life, to the point where she told everyone that I lived up in the air.
Wow, really?
Yeah.
Oh man.
And I have a 18-year-old son as well, and you know, there's a cost to that. It's just you don't hear it as much, you know, from a teenager. But all that to say is, like, you can get so wrapped up into what you're seeing on the ground and looking at, you know, the odds, you know, pickers on like who's going to be nominated, who's not, you know, just the stress of it all and the pressure. But just to then hear from your friends, like, that it means something to the community, just kind of like allows you to step outside of yourself and like see that all of this, like, hopefully move some collective needle forward a little bit, you know.
Oh man, it was so exciting. I think Keith just said that while I was running to get the windscreen, but to be in Austin and to see one of our own up there and like have your movie talked about and
That's right.
listen to you on Fresh Air and on the town, like all of that was so exhilarating in this sort of like, you know, rising tide lifts all boats way. And just you're such a great guy, you know. It was like, if you were an a-hole, I might have felt differently about it.
Well, he's spending time with me now that I am a nominee. Who is this? This is asshole.
Who is this a-hole? Well, so as we're finishing up here, I always like to ask people, what was the gateway drug film for you that made you want to make films?
Well, kind of right as I was discovering film, there were 2 films I saw like in pretty quick succession that reframed like what I thought was possible. One is Y Tu Mama Tambien.
Yeah. Nice. Oh, that's I haven't thought about that movie in a while.
Just a movie that the way as a term that we use of like letting the world breathe into your film. It just felt very much like it was inhaling and exhaling in context of the world around them and inviting the world into the movie. And then the other was Once.
The singing movie?
Yeah.
I've never seen that movie, but Paul Steckler talks about that movie constantly.
Oh my gosh.
I don't think I've seen it either.
Oh, I love it so much.
Give us the elevator pitch. What's it about?
It's a movie about kind of an Irish street musician in Dublin who just mostly plays covers, but sometimes plays his own songs, and a woman who was an immigrant into the country from Eastern Europe, like hears him on the street one day. It turns out, like, before she had to escape her country, was a concert pianist, and she starts to encourage him to play more of that music and like record it. And then they have this sort of wild idea of like, we should make an album, and they kind of recruit a bunch of other street musicians, like form this band, scrape together what little money they have to get like a day or 2 in the studio. And they lay down this album, and it's both like an almost love story, but really it's more like the power of friendship and the power of like creativity being a healing balm.
Wow.
And it was made for like $100,000, just like very guerrilla and very much like a just go make a movie with your friends vibe.
Incredible.
And it went all the way to the Oscars. It won Best Original Song at the Oscars.
Wow. Was that Glenn Hansard?
Glenn Hansard of The Frames.
Okay.
Yeah.
Yes. Okay.
Who's extraordinary. And I think it's Marketa Inglova is the
her name.
Is his counterpart in the film. It's just a wondrous
It always comes back to friendship and collaboration.
Yeah.
It really does.
It does.
We have some stuff to learn about that. Ben.
We do. Yeah, I think we can learn a lot from Greg.
All right.
If only we were friends, Keith.
So one day.
Greg, thank you so much
Thanks,
for doing
guys.
this, man.
Yeah.
This is a blast.
It's a pleasure. Thanks for having me.
That was Greg Kwedar. And I have to tell you, when he was talking about Divine I and Divine G, two men from different backgrounds with different approaches, struggling together to find friendship through art, I felt like he was writing the synopsis of this documentary podcast. Ben?
So should you be Divine Keith and I'll be Divine Ben?
Totally. Yeah.
Katie's gonna love that.
Oh, yeah.
Honey, I need
call
you
your hat guy. We need new hats. All right. So Greg, as promised, I hope, delivered on some inspiration, on some process, and it's just a good hang.
He's just a great dude. Like, he is one of those guys that just, his heart is in the right place. He cares deeply about people, gets inspired by, these sort of like very touching human moments. Like when he was talking about the border patrol agent skipping stones. Like, that's such a beautiful inclination,
Well, speaking of inclinations, we'd be remiss if we didn't give a shout out to Clint Bentley, Greg's partner in crime and writing collaborator, and another director with deep documentary roots.
See, another successful partnership, Keith.
We should reach out to Clint. We should get Clint on the show. See.
Well, I was just saying, like, our successful creative partnership.
Well, no, I got it. I understood.
Do you need me to draw that out on a whiteboard?
Can we board that up? The fun of this podcast is getting out and just like talking the talk, walking the dock, spending time with you. Bringing Greg into the mix was just a big cherry on top. So
having adventures with our friends. I mean, that's why I got into making documentaries in the first place. So I was thrilled to do that today with Greg, to do that with you, to find all these weird little creeks we keep finding on our walks.
I love finding a creek, and I love connecting with you folks out there. If you are out there, if anyone is out there, drop us a line. Come check us out, talk to us. If you have ideas for episodes, if there's things you want to know, if there's stuff we're talking about too much that you're sick of, share your thoughts and feedback on our socials. What are those, Ben?
Those are, our Instagram handle is @DocWalksPod. We're on X under the same title, and you can find us on YouTube @DocWalksPod.
And
and I've Spotify and Apple Podcasts and all the places that you listen to podcasts.
So we're out there. We hope you're out there too. Thanks for spending some time with us. Ben, thanks for a great morning.
Keith, I have fun doing this, and I'm so grateful. So thank you.
You're an asset to every room you walk into and every street you walk down.
Oh, jeez. Well, let's do this more often.
So next week we are digging deep. This is a deep cut, a mentor figure to both of us, renowned
documentarian as well as doctor. He puts the doctor in documentarian.
Doctor documentary. Paul Steckler. Dr. Paul Steckler will be joining us. Professor Emeritus from the University of Texas Film Program.
That's right. He was actually my advisor in grad school and has been a close friend of mine for many years. So excited to get Paul on the podcast.
He's got 40 years plus of political filmmaking to talk about. This is a particularly political moment. And Paul, I think, will have some insight to share.
And we're excited to have him. We'll be at the University of Texas where he taught, and we can't wait to share it with you guys. So stay tuned.
Doc Walks is created, produced, and edited by my friend Ben Steinbauer of The Bear.
Hello. And my friend Keith Maitland of Go Valley.
Thanks for tuning in.
Follow us at DocWalksPod on Instagram, X, and YouTube.